what time it is where you are in the world, but I know that it's 5 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast near Washington, D.C. And for Cassandra, it is 2 p.m. or a little after 2 p.m. now. And this is Carla, and I am here to speak with Cassandra about the global village and her life. And I forgot to tell you, her name is Cassandra Garabedian. If I didn't say it right, you can correct it in a few moments, Cassandra. And this interview, like all of my interviews, is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. Cassandra, can you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Yes, Carla. My name is Cassandra Garabedian, and I am with Making Statements in Style. I am an image consultant, an author, and a stylist.
You're very interesting, Cassandra. I know that you live in the Berkeley area. How long have you been there?
I'm a native. I'm a native of California, born and raised in Berkeley, traveled the world, went to school in San Francisco.
Okay, you just said you traveled the world. Where have you been traveling?
I traveled throughout Europe, all through some of the Pacific, all through Canada, just throughout the world. I modeled, so I was able to travel that way. Love fashion. My mother taught me all about fashion. So I was able to, once I graduated through college, I was able to travel, make my way to travel by way of being able to model.
And what made you decide to go into modeling?
Well, again, my mother being a seamstress with Levi Strauss, one of the first Black women to manage the seamstress department department in Levi Strauss of San Francisco. Throughout that, my mom being a seamstress, being able to teach me all about fashion. Once I was able to learn all about that through my mom, having to be a model for her, basically, that just threw me into fashion. I mean, learning all about fabrics, textiles, and knowing all about seamstress, seamstress work, and all through all of that, her teaching me all of that, I just gradually navigated through and gravitated through the fashion world.
Okay, you were telling me that you're very much interested in the global village. Can you please define what you mean by global village?
Oh, sure. My neighborhood, my village, my community was a global village. It takes a village to raise a child. And my home, my neighborhood was that global village. It consisted of just about every nationality there is. We had the American Japanese, Mexican American, Chinese American, just about every nationality there was, and they raised us. So when it comes to the Japanese culture, I know that. I was raised with that. Mr. and Mrs. Nachikachi, they taught us all about the cuisine, the heritage, the culture, the religion, Buddhism. They taught us all of that. I grew up with that. They raised me, Mr. and Mrs. Nachikachi, they raised us. Mr. and Mrs. Fournier, the Frenchmen, they raised us. I grew up with Michelle and Louise Fournier. So Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, they raised us. So when it came time during the holidays, we had a festivity. We exchanged meals during those times. I know all about the cultures. I know all about what it takes to get along with people and treat people with dignity and respect. You may not agree with everything, but you respect one another. So I know what it takes to get along with people. You may not even speak the same language, but you know with the heart. You speak with the heart. We know what it takes to respect one another. You know what it takes to get along with one another because we lived in that same area, lived across the street. We lived next door to one another. So we know what it took to live close together and to live in harmony. They know what it took to raise their children together. That's what we did. We played with one another. So we knew. In close quarters, we lived on Fifth Street. That was our community. We treated one another with respect. We lived with one another. The women at that time, during the 60s, the 50s, the women were household. You know, the women stayed home most of the time. And so they were the ones that nurtured the kids, that took care of the kids. And so, and the men, they came, but the men also, they were there to take care of the kids that watched over. And it was great to see how the men gathered around and watched over the kids and watched how we were out there in the evening and played in the streets. And when the men came home after a long day's work in the evening and would sit out and talk, that was that mutual respect. So when it takes a global village, it does. And to see how everyone maneuvered around. And yes, there were spats. However, how they communicated and how they ironed things out. We watched that as children. I can remember that. And if I can remember, I'm pretty sure that other children remember. I can remember Michael Fournier coming back after the military and coming back and bringing me his army ring years later. So these are the kinds of things. And I can remember that Mr. Gray Six that owned a large manufacturing building behind us, giving us parties for every, if it wasn't for Halloween, it was for Christmas. And Bear Aspirin, the Bear Aspirin that we all know, are familiar with, giving us huge parties. So these type of things left an everlasting impression on my informative mind, that it's that global village that left us such an everlasting impression on my impressionable mind at 8, 7, 9 years old and up, that these people can come in that had homes from other places, that didn't necessarily live, but worked in our areas. But also the people that lived in our area that can nurture and love in our neighborhood, as well as those that lived in our neighborhood that knew how the children there was so impressionable, but so loving and tender and impressionable, that they too saw something in this global village that was so worthwhile and so tender and impressionable, that they saw that was so loving and tender, that this village was so dynamic and so powerful and so global, that the children inside of it was so global and so worthwhile, that it made such a powerful impact, that others saw this dynamic, powerful, empowering, that these children can grow up and do such wonderful things in the world, that others can do it too.
Having said that, you were also around many different languages. How did you were born here, so you knew English. Did you find yourself helping the children learn to speak English?
Yes. For instance, the Martinezes, their grandmother, who spoke no English, and many of the children that came out of the Martinezes from home spoke no English. So we had to encourage them to speak English, and they wanted to speak English. And those that came over into their families that visited them most oftentimes didn't speak English. And so it was, when they did visit, it was like food for thought. It was like gold. They wanted to speak English so badly, and that was their main thing, that they wanted to come here to America to speak English. And that more than playing with toys or anything, it was, let's learn how to speak English. And that was their main focus. They wanted to do that more than anything. They wanted to sit around and they wanted to learn how to speak English. They just wanted to talk. That's all they wanted to do, was just talk, learn how to speak English. Either they wanted to listen to the radio or watch television or talk to you. So that was the main focus. Just talk to me. Let's learn how to, let's play flashcards. Let's learn words. It didn't necessarily mean that you had to buy any cards, just put down words or put down words on a card and put them onto clothing or just objects, just to learn the spoken word of the English language. And that's what we did, to show them how to, speak the English language. And as children, we were just shouting out just different words. And that was our way of teaching them the language. But as resilient as children are, they caught on very easily.
Now, these days, and I'm sure you're still working with the children, technology has become very important. How has technology played in the role of this global village where so many different languages were at play?
Oh, it's funny that you say that. My nephew, right now, he's very fluent in Arabic. My nephew, he can speak Arabic quite fluently. My sister and I often joke right now, half the time we don't know what he's saying to us because he can just go on and on and on in Arabic, and we have no idea what Braylon is saying at this time. Yeah, because he can speak it very fluently. His mom is from the Middle East, and he, he just picked it up so fluently. Just right off the bat. And children, with this technology these days, he was 3 years old and he had her tablet, and he was just, he can swipe and pick up things and go onto her tablet easier than me or her. His grandmother, she cannot do anything with these computers or anything. And he's like, let me show you. He's got the tablet and he's, here, this is how you do it, Grandma. So children are just, they have grown up with this. So this is like second nature to them. They're not afraid of the tablets or this technology, so to speak. Whereas his grandmother or anyone else not involved, having grown up with it or a little inhibited by it, and he's like, no, let me show you, this is how you do it. And he's just been doing this since he was 3 years old.
So you're seeing that people or the children are beginning to use technology. Do you think that's a great way to teach children language?
It has its positives, and just like anything else, balance. There's a balance to it. There's a balance to it, a happy medium to anything. You just have to know how far to use anything.
So are you seeing that the children around you are beginning to learn English more using technology? Or is it more the old, I don't want to say the old fashioned way?
No, I think that they're using it. I think they're using it at a more excelled rate now because of technology. However, like I said, with technology, it has its pros and cons. And with anything, If you take it too far, and if you don't have your boundaries, as with anything, you can go overboard. And you just have to know, as a parent, you have to know, I mean, you just can't sit your child in front of a TV or a laptop and think that that's going to the be all end all. You have to engage. You just can't leave it all to the computer or to technology. You can't disengage and think that that's going to be all of, just like with going to school. You can't think that the teacher is going to do it all. You have to engage and be there for your child too. You have to be a part of the solution too. You just can't leave it all to the school or the teacher. When the child come home, you have to reinforce what the teacher has taught your child.
So what do you suggest when it comes to teaching English and using technology? What do you think is the best way? There are people who say watching movies with subtitles in English helps to do it. What do you suggest?
Well, when I was learning Italian before going over to Italy, I did that also. I watched movies with subtitles. Oh, every little bit helps. You can't just say, I'm just going to do this one little part here and I'm not going to do this. Try out every little bit. You never know what part will be useful to you. For example, there's all sorts of different teaching methods. Not all one style suits a particular person. I know that for me, I am a visual type of learner. Some people are more audio. So it all depends on what your learning style. You can't say one style fits all. You have to be able to assess what is it that fits that particular person's learning style.
So what do you suggest, or how do you suggest that we teach children English online? Because it looks like we're going to be online for a little bit longer.
But you have to assess what that particular person's learning style is before you can say, this is how we're going to go. Because you don't know what that particular child or person's learning style is.
Are you saying that people who are learning English need to have an assessment, a formal assessment to learn English using the computer?
Well, just sort of at least like interview or just sort of have an idea of what it is that that person's learning style is. Because you can't just plop a person. I mean, when you're going to school, they do have some type of assessment to find out just where you are before they put you into a class.
So maybe I'm not asking it correctly.
No, I see what you're saying. So yes, in other words, yes. Before you start to say, okay, if you're going to be in English 1, 2, or 3, just like if we're going to put you in the Spanish class. Are you going to be in the beginning, or are you going to be an intermediate, or are you going to be an advanced?
Right. So what is the best way to find this out in your mind?
In my mind, to find out how much English do you know. So yes, some type of assessment. and then find out where you are as far as your learning style. Yes. Do you do better with visual cues? Do you do better with audio? Do you do better with whatever type of stimulation do you need?
Okay. Do you think when should we start teaching children English using?
The earlier, the better.
So how old are you talking about? When they're still in their crib, or?
Yes.
Why do you say yes?
Because that's when they're, as far as what psychologists and all of the professionals say, that is when children are most stimulated. That is when they're more open and receptive to receiving and attaining all of the information. So that's when the development stage.
Does development stop at a certain age, or doesn't it go throughout life?
It still goes throughout life, but that is when it's really open and receptive, and they're just, it's like a sponge, and they're just absorbing all of these things that they're saying, that children at that age, you know, the development stage, so to speak, that children, toddlers, and so to speak, that they're just pulling all of that information in. That is really when it really taking it in.
Okay. What else would you like to see with instruction in the global village when it comes to language?
I'm sorry, say that again, Carla.
What else do you want to see in the world today, in this global world, to help people or help children, also adults, learn to speak English confidently?
More of a mutual respect, especially when it comes to this dialogue with women issues, empowerment of women. I want women to know that their voices need to be heard. It needs to be heard in a powerful way. Women need to stand up, band together, and know that there's power in numbers, and that they mean that they mean that their voices mean something, whatever that is that they feel that mean to them, and that they should feel that we are behind them as women, and that with this trafficking that's going on, and that when women feel that they're not believed or heard, that they should still stand up for what they feel that is right, no matter what is said or not said, stand their ground, as long as they know in their heart what is right, no matter what things may appear to look around them, appearances. If you know yourself, what has happened to you, you know yourself, then you stand up for yourself. And so with that, I say, find the courage and the strength, because with that, others will see that in you and will band, other women will band with you. And as far as the children who have been trafficked and molested and those type of things, there's strength, and we need to find our voices.
And what is the best way to find our voice and help people understand the importance of English?
With laws,
I'm wondering, are laws really the way? Doesn't it come from within the individual and sprinkle out into
well, with laws, with education, with medical help, with treatment, and like I said, with education, those type of things. But within those laws, and I'm not just talking about laws that imprison, I'm talking about laws that help circumvent the repeat of this cycle of letting, excuse me, letting people out. This repeated cycle of just endless, just keep going back and forth, and you never get off this guinea pig of a wheel, and it just keeps going on, and you just never get off, and it just keeps cycling, and you never get anywhere.
So what can we do so it's not just recycling, but we learn to?
Well, that's what I'm saying, where you sit down and you actually have treatment, where you actually help educate, mental illness treatment that actually work, where you actually sit down and actually, whether it is spiritual, emotional, mental treatment where you're actually having some really psychological talk where you're actually trying to figure out what is it that gets you to that point to where you want to harm a person to that degree, and why is it that you feel that you have to do those things, and what is it that makes you get to that point. Why is it that you feel that you're there? What where would you like to be? Why are you here? Where would you like to be? And how do we get there? Give other options. See where you want to go. Where would you like to be? Give some spiritual counseling. Give other options that are available that we haven't done before. Give some other solutions that we haven't tried before. It's obvious that things that we've tried in the past hasn't worked. Give some other solutions.
So do you think technology can be used to do that?
Possibly. Possibly. I'm just thinking that there's got to be a better way. Things of the past has not helped. Throwing money at prisons, I don't feel hasn't worked. I feel that prisons have just been another means to making money. Sure, we need prisons, but I'm wondering to what extent. I'm not saying no, we do need prisons because that is some way of keeping some stability to, our society. So we do need prisons, but I feel that once again, that has been to the detriment of our society to the extent that we have used it as a money-making machine for some, to the detriment to others. But that's a whole nother other story.
Thank you so very much, Cassandra, for your time. What do you want to leave our audience with before we end this conversation?
As a speaker and a motivator and to inspire, I'd like to say that if we would just all, and coming from a global perspective, there is enough room in this world for all of us. If we would just only learn the common language of love. And if we would just learn to respect one another. You don't have to like, but just respect. And it's the common language of just love. And that's the spoken language that all know. Love.
Thank you so very much, Cassandra. Thanks for the people who watch.
And thank you, Carla.
And I look forward to speaking with you in the future. This interview is now over, and we want to also thank the Institute of Peace for sponsoring this interview between Cassandra and myself. And with that, can we wave goodbye? Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
We are going off air.